Okay, sorry about that. So to get started, I wanted us to kind of there's going to be something that is covered over and over and over again in policy. And so I figured it made sense to start with the things that we're going to see replicated throughout so that I don't present all the caveats every single time we're talking about a new service. So to start, not every service talked about tonight is going to be appropriate for every child. That item or service has to directly benefit your child in order for it to be approved. Go back, sorry. The service or item that you're requesting, if it can be covered by Medicaid, durable medical equipment, by the orthotics prosthetics policy or home health supplies benefit, then those things have to be pursued through Medicaid state plan, including utilizing EPSDT, which we're not going to have time to really dig into tonight, and not CAPC. Now, if you go through all of those steps and cannot get approval, then it can be requested through CAPC. But there are some things that will specifically allow you to go ahead and immediately request under CAPC because that's where that lives. CAPC will not cover items or services that they consider recreational. And that would be left up to interpretation sometime, especially since I feel like the policy and purpose of CAPC is about living a full life in your home and community. And sometimes that does mean recreational needs. And there are a few caveats that it will cover if it's like safety, even if it might be a recreational need. But in general, if I wanted to go buy roller skates for my kid, and I said, that's really going to be what they need to work on balance and strength, they would probably see that as recreational, unless I could really, really justify it medically. That was probably a terrible example, but who of us will put our kids on roller skates these days? Repairs are covered for any item that we're talking about tonight, as long as the cost to repair doesn't exceed replacement of that item. So that applies to vehicle mods, home mods, assistive tech, that's going to be over and over and over. So I'm not going to say that every time. So just know that yes, repairs are covered. And because the nature of these slides being boring as they are, that is because I cut and pasted from the CAPC clinical coverage policy. You might see it listed sometimes as CCP, shortened to that. 3K1 is the CAPC policy, and there's the link there. And as Elaine put in the chat, the slides and the recording will be available afterwards, so you can always pull that. But I will tell you my go-to, because I'm not computer savvy enough to have bookmarks for all the things I use all the time. So I Google every time I need the policy, unless I go to our website. Now that it's there, a lot of times I'll do that. But if you Google NC Medicaid CAPC clinical coverage policy, you will find this link. So it's my little tidbit for the day. But it will be here when you get it after the presentation. All right, now we can go to the next slide. So I wish I could tell you there was a specific order to this because they seem to be alphabetical, but they're not entirely alphabetical. So we are going page by page through the clinical coverage policy where it's talking about these non-caregiving services. So we're going to start with assistive technology. If you were to go to that link on page 116 is where it starts. And another note, page 116 is the way that it's numbered in the policy and not the 116th page of the PDF, because those are two different places. So this would, all of the page numbers that I'm giving you tonight, this is the way that the policy is numbered. So jumping right off with assistive technology. Again, this is word for word from policy. So we're just going to read through it a little bit and talk through what this means. So assistive tech is used for improving or maximizing the functional capabilities of the beneficiary, improving the accessibility and use of beneficiary's environment, addressing 24-hour coverage issues. As we know, there's a staffing shortage. So if there's something that you need in your home to allow either that child to be independent in the home sometimes, or to allow you to sleep because of a monitoring system or something along those lines. Ceiling track system for the purpose of transfers. Oh, that is where I forgot to get a picture of. My apologies. The environmental control unit, so some kind of electric aid that is used to operate lights, doors, control the heating and air, things like that. And then adaptive tricycles are also under this policy. So I'm going to hold off on tricycles for a second, and I want to talk about the first five and just kind of give you some examples because, of course, there are tons of things out there that that your child may benefit from. But I have a lot of people say, well, what's assistive technology other than a ceiling track system? Like, how could my child benefit from that? One thing that I have seen used is in terms of addressing 24-hour coverage issues. If you have a child that is not able to walk independently, but maybe has, say, a power chair, it's a safety risk for them to be left at home if they can't exit the house in an emergency. Say there was a fire that started or something, and that child needed a way out and they couldn't get out, then obviously you can't leave them home alone. So I have seen remote controls that will open the front door. Can think of, any other kind of remote control to turn the lights on and off, to adjust the thermostat like we were talking about. So sometimes it's hard to distinguish between assistive tech and home modifications. And the way I always look at it as, is there like actual technology involved, like electronic components? So a ceiling track system, if you've never seen one of those, helps you get the child from one room to another. And yes, you can push them along the track, but also there's a remote to use to make that, especially for it to go up and down. So there's an electronic component. So that's why a ceiling track system lives under assistive tech and not under home modification when you're having to request items. I'm sure there's like way more technology, in safety that's involved, but those are the things that I've personally seen work. And we'll do more of home mods when we get to that section. Adaptive tricycles. So this is a tricycle that has, so CAPC is not going to pay for a normal tricycle that you could go get at Walmart, because that would be considered recreational. But if the child needs, say, hand pedals because they can't pedal their feet, that would be an adaptive tricycle. There's also ones where, the arms and legs are both moving, but the parent pushes it. But even the motion is therapeutic, and getting that sensation is good for brain development. So there's lots of different types of adaptive tricycles. If you haven't seen one, then I suggest, Googling them, looking into them. It's pretty cool, all the different options that are out there. If we can go to the next slide, there is a little bit of a caveat, and that's that adaptive tricycles, the budget for that is only up to $3,000. So a small trike for a 3 to 7-year-old could probably easily be covered under $3,000. But as kids get older and therefore bikes get bigger, they get more expensive, unfortunately. So the limit for that item is up to $3,000. That budget lives within the $28,000 modification budget. And that is assistive technology, home modifications, and vehicle modifications are all under that $25,000 budget. So if you spend $28,000 on a vehicle modification, you're not going to have any more money to do a home modification until the next waiver cycle. And the next waiver cycle is March 1st of 2028. So we've got a few years. Any questions about assistive tech before we move on? And you all can't mute or can't unmute yourself, I don't think. At least I was hoping to do that because we were expecting a large crowd tonight. So if you want to put your questions in the chat for now, and at the end we can come off mute. But I just want to make sure we get through everything first. Okay, let's go to the next one. These next two are ones that are going to be incredibly difficult to use because they're in very unique situations. I have seen it used, but only more recently. So community transition, this service is only available if the child has been institutionalized, so either in a facility or in a hospital for at least 90 days in a row. So that by the time you get into Cap C, you're probably not still in the institution. So that makes this a harder service to use. So community transition will cover equipment, furniture, like kitchen items, bed items, that kind of thing, if the family does not have a way to access that. It will also cover security deposits or any other like fees, like application fee to obtain a lease, setup fees or deposits for utilities, linkage to legal support if that's needed, and anything else that's not listed that's necessary to integrate into the community to transition out of that institution. So let's go to the next slide. It sounded like a really nice long list of things that it could cover, but the benefit can exceed $2,500. So in all honesty, you're not going to get all of those things on the previous list for $2,500 for sure. But it's helpful to know if it's out there. I see this potentially being something that maybe a child that's in foster care that's been placed in a facility that's coming home could use the transition that way, or if someone is, had an incredibly lengthy hospitalization, then that it might be possible. Keep in mind, though, that if a child has Cap C and then is in the hospital for more than 30 days, that has to be reported to DSS. And you're withdrawn from Cap C. Now, you can get back in quickly, but that's why I see this as being really difficult to use, unless it's a protracted hospital discharge, for lots of complicated reasons. But yeah, but this was the next thing in policy. It was on page 118 and 119. So we'll look at the next one. Community integration is similar to community transition, except this is for someone that is a current waiver participant, but they're in jeopardy of losing their community placement because of tenancy issues. That can be, due to sudden eviction or something along those lines. This money cannot be used to pay rent. So if you're behind on rent, this is not an option for that. But what it will pay for or are services see, this is why I highlighted it. Services provided by a community-based organization, housing authority, agency, or legal aid representation. So I don't know of anybody that does this, that charges for their services, except maybe if you were having to involve legal aid in some way. And if you don't meet the income requirements for legal aid, you do have to pay. So in theory, I see this being used for that, but if anyone else has any other situations where they have seen that work, I would love to know about them. I've never seen this service implemented, but that's the condition that I see it being used in based on the language in the policy. It does have to be specifically related to eviction or risk of losing their placement, and it'll only pay for someone to help them get out of that situation. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
Hey, Jenny, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Are we sure that they actually mean legal aid? Because it's not capitalized, and I'm wondering if they just mean some type of legal services outside of that.
I would agree. Yeah, it's not capitalized, so it could be another attorney. Legal aid may still be your cheapest option. And while there's not a budget listed for this, I believe it's in combination with the community transition, so it'd be the $2,500. So, but yeah, I mean, if you hire your own attorney, I agree. I think that would be covered. I don't think it has to be a legal aid attorney.
I think the tricky part of this is probably identifying exactly what they will reimburse to the family, and if the community organization or representative will wait for the reimbursement.
Right.
Wait, I wonder if this is something that we can get them to kind of flesh out a little bit more, because families are in this type of transition or in crisis. So it would behoove them to make this a little bit more clear, I think.
Yeah. And what is confusing to me is under community transition, it will cover like fees and things. It just won't cover rent itself. So while it says in this policy that they won't cover rent, would they cover late fees maybe on rent or something else that would be necessary that's not rent to allow them to continue to stay there? And I can certainly try to get that fleshed out a little bit. But I find it odd that they don't even put the budget with it. So as you will find as we go through this, there's some interesting parts to this policy. Any other questions about community integration? Okay, we can go on to the next one. So in some parts of policy, it may give an example of things that might be covered, but other times you come across language like this where it says, this is the only things that we will cover. So that's why I highlighted that. So for home accessibility and adaptation, got our pages up there. So some of these are fairly self-explanatory, and I do have some pictures of these that I will show once we read through them. But I just wanted to point out that these are the only things that it will cover. So if there's something in addition, that's going to be the family's responsibility. And maybe the case manager can help identify other sources to cover things that aren't in here. But this is what you could request under Cap C. So wheelchair ramps, whether they're stationary or portable, and wheelchair ramps with landing pads. So if it's needing to make a turn, threshold ramps, which allow the wheelchair to go up and over a threshold that might otherwise be a step. grab bars or safety rails, whether that's on stairs, in the bathroom. It just says mounted to wall. It does not say what room that wall has to be in. Modification of an existing bathroom to improve accessibility. So that might be a roll-in shower, sink modifications, water faucet controls, tub modification, toilet modification, things like that. And of course, all the required plumbing and things that might have to go along with that. There are some rules about if they have to get a new mirror, like a mirror can be put back if they have to remove a cabinet, like an under the sink cabinet. They need to account for replacing things that are lost because of how things have been reshuffled. But a lot of times there has been pushback to that in the past, but I do think that is doing better. We can go ahead and go to the next slide and run through all of these, and then we can look at some pictures. So widening of doorways for wheelchair access and turnaround space. Bedroom modifications to allow space for hospital beds or for the wheelchair to get in and out and turn around, things like that. Lift systems or elevators that are used, that has to be in the beneficiary's private primary residence. And it can't otherwise be covered under DME. But I've never seen lift systems. Well, lift and I think elevators. As we know, the manual lift is covered under DME. So, but anything beyond that, like if it was a ceiling lift, that would be covered under Cap C. Porch stair lifts, which we have a picture of in a minute, so you can see that. Floor coverings. So there's two ways that floor coverings can be covered. And one is that there have been documented falls resulting in injury, and you have to have needed to go to the hospital or emergency room for that. Or if the floor coverings are contributing to asthma exacerbations, it says documented in the health record, they do require a letter of medical necessity for that, to show that, and then that it's requiring repeated emergency room or hospital treatment, that asthma is. So then you can remove carpet and put down wood or tile or whatever is best suited for your house. Hypoallergenic filters for the home. It says when qualifying conditions are met, and then it never states those qualifying conditions other than general purpose. They're going to want a letter of medical necessity. So assuming that is what they're referring to there. We can go ahead and go to the next one. Driving surfaces. So like your driveway, I've seen it where families have a really steep gravel driveway and ambulances can't make it to their house. Then they will cover like paving of that surface to allow emergency vehicles to be able to access the home. Portable or whole house air filtration system. So there's a bunch of caveats if you keep reading all of that. But essentially, if there's medical necessity for having air filtration, then that is coverable. I would say typically portable is going to be what they want to do if a child is in the same room all the time and never leaves the rest and goes to the rest of the house. That would be portable versus a child who is able to access the whole house. Then you would need the whole house being covered. So they do look at things like that, and that would be why they would be two different options. However, M, which is contentious, to a lot of us who have unsuccessfully attempted to get these for families. A portable backup generator, they'll cover that if a child uses a ventilator more than 8 hours a day, and that in the event of a power outage, they would require hospitalization. We all know that ventilators have anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, most of them, well, maybe it's 2 to 8 hours of battery life. But essentially, if you have no access to anything beyond that, you're in trouble. So they used to, and I've gotten a whole house generator that comes on automatically when the power goes out, and you don't have to worry about dragging your portable backup generator out of the garage into the driveway, dealing with the gas that's required to run it and all of that, which I personally and a lot of other of us feel is very unsafe and an unfair ask, especially of a parent who might be home alone with a child on a ventilator. But alas, we have not been able to move the needle very far on getting the whole house covered. I will say we were promised when policy was released, we didn't have the clinical coverage policy, but when we had the waiver itself approved, gosh, 2 years ago. That's probably right. It's probably 2 years ago this summer. We were promised within the next 6 months there was going to be an evaluation of whole house generators being covered. And to my knowledge, that has not happened. So when you're petitioning Medicaid for things, please keep that in mind. Lots of families would appreciate that. Okay, the next slide. Okay, here's some examples. So in the top left, I don't know if you want to point, Dania, if people can see your pointer, but in the top left, we've got a stair lift. So that's going to be, this looks like a custom one that you can see at the landing, how it kind of curves around. So they custom make each of these of this type of what we're looking at to fit your stairway. And then it's a way to transfer the child from one floor to the other. On the bottom left, we've got a wheelchair ramp. That is a portable one because it's metal. So we haven't talked about what's excluded, that's coming in a minute, but if you need a portable ramp, this would be a portable option. The middle top, we've got a walk-in shower and a whole bathroom that's been modified. It looks really nice. It's got grab bars. It's got the shower head is reachable and removable, so you can hold that and wash them without having to position them correctly under the falling water over top. The bottom in the middle is a threshold ramp, and this is a portable threshold ramp. It folds up, and so that's something that can be used in rental property. The top right, if you notice, to the left of the stairs is a stair. I guess that would be a lift, but not a stair lift like the left picture. This would lift the whole wheelchair up. And it's typically used for, this is an outdoor version of that. But you just roll the child in, it closes up behind them, raises up, and then the gate that you see at the top swings open, and then you can push the wheelchair on through. In the bottom right is a widened doorway, so you don't have to worry about all the scuff marks on your wood. So we've got plenty of room for the wheelchair to come through. Let's talk about what's excluded, and that's the next slide. So anything on this list is going to be excluded. So again, like somebody said, you can't add to the total square footage of the home. So they won't pay for you to add on to your house or for you to convert a garage into a bedroom, because that would add square footage to the home. So they cannot do that. They can't do general home improvements or renovations or repairs. They can only do things that are going to benefit that child. Homes that are under construction, because they can be finished to be accessible if they are not completed yet. So that's why that's not covered. A dwelling where the owner refuses the modification. So that kind of goes with E about having a rented residence. You are allowed to have portable modifications, like we saw the threshold ramp was portable because it's one that folds up. And the front door ramp that we saw was portable because it's metal and can be moved from one to the other versus like building a wooden deck that's attached to the house and having the ramp on that. So purchase of locks, and I'm assuming that's because of Medicaid's policy about not restraining individuals. Although of course we know sometimes locks are important to keep them from running out of the house, if that may be an issue, but just know that that's something that they're saying is excluded. Service agreements or maintenance contracts, insurance and extended warranties. That is not Medicaid's responsibility. So if you want to add a contract, a maintenance contract onto one of the modifications that you've done, say the whole house infiltration, the whole house filtration system, for example, they have an extended warranty, that would be your responsibility to pay for. But if it's under warranty and gets damaged, as we said at the beginning, they will pay for repairs. So, in which case you shouldn't need to do a maintenance contract because if it gets damaged, it's going to get repaired. Roof repair or air conditioning repair is not something that would be covered. Swimming pools, hot tubs. Of course, it'd be great if I had a hot tub on the back of my house that CABC paid for, but even if you think your child would really benefit from getting in the pool and, water therapy, unfortunately, that is excluded. Anything that has general utility to a non-disabled beneficiary, which is to say, of course, if you have a ramp, maybe it's easier for you to go up the ramp than the stairs. But in general, it's designed for the beneficiary. So if it was something that you wanted to do just for you, then of course that's not going to be covered. Replacement of equipment that has not been properly used or has been lost or purposely damaged won't be covered. But of course, if it was an accident, or part of normal wear and tear, then it is going to be covered. A computer desk or any other furniture is not covered. They don't cover plumbing issues. The only plumbing that they'll cover is under one of the modifications we already talked about. Like a bathroom modification. The approved vendor for the service cannot be a spouse of the individual or a parent or primary caregiver or legal guardian. So even if you have a great construction company that does this kind of work and you feel like you could do it cheaper, unfortunately, that is a restriction that it cannot be you. And then air filtration that's less than 50 parts per billion. They just want if they're going to pay for something, they want it to be high quality. Any pressing questions that we didn't talk about on home modifications? I feel like that is probably that and vehicle modifications are the most straightforward. So I did want to, oh, I do have one more slide about it. Yeah, never mind. Sorry, go to the next slide. I had already advanced it on the one I'm looking at. So again, like we talked about for assistive tech, subject to that $28,000 budget. This is a combined budget per household, not per child, which is something else that we've been trying to address with the state. So even if you have multiple children in the home that are on CAPC, you don't get more money. Occasionally, sometimes if you can justify why their needs are different, then you might potentially be able to work around that, but know that the default is that it's per family. If you get a physician order for medical necessity, it should eliminate needing to pay sales tax. And most DMEs that do this work are going to ask for that, but just wanted to let you know so that you're saving some of your budget by not having to pay for sales tax if you've got that order to show medical necessity. And again, we talked about the two places where they will do modifications: a primary private residence that's owned by the beneficiary or their family. So that means if you also have a house in the mountains or a house at the beach and you live in Raleigh, it has to be, they'll only cover it for where that child resides. And then rented residence when the modifications are portable. We already talked about that. One note that I wanted to add is that children in foster care are able to receive a portable modification. That is a change that used to not be the case. And children that are in a permanent foster care placement, that's been ordered by the court that it's a permanent placement. Maybe they're not wanting to be adopted, or there's some reason that's preventing that. If it's intended to last more than 3 years, then they can actually receive a permanent home modification. So that was some good news we got with this new policy. With that, I think we did cover home modifications. So if you've got any other questions, drop them in the chat, and we're going to go to goods and services. This is where it gets interesting. Oh, I lost Dania. Dania, can you move the slide?
Yay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. I was trying to alert you by not responding. So I was like, maybe that. um, so a couple of questions in the chat that I wanted to read for you so that we could all kind of collectively address them. I have some ideas, but I know that you do too, and Elaine as well. So Alessandra, and if I butcher anyone's name, I apologize. My name is very easily butcherable, so I'm very sensitive to that, and I will do my best. And if it's wrong, feel free to send me a a way to do it. So Alessandra is saying, for floor coverings, does it have to be asthma exacerbations only, or can it be for respiratory distress due to allergy for carpeting? Even if child doesn't have asthma, but there's evidence that respiratory distress occurs, would this be considered coverable? And there is a, in the section of the approvable home mods, in section L, actually, it does say that they will approve a whole house air filtration system for a beneficiary with severe allergies or asthma when all other preventative measures, such as the removal of the allergen or irritant and removal of carpeting and drapes, have been attempted. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it tends to suggest that it's saying that you should attempt that. And so if you can't afford that, it seems that they're also saying that they're encouraging that as well. So I just want, Jenny, do you agree with that? There are a lot of examples where policy is not consistent. And so this is
Mhm.
one of those situations where I feel like we could, an advocate or your case manager could go to the CAPC unit and argue this point.
Mhm. Yeah,
You,
I mean, I would always try. I mean, then the worst thing that can happen is they deny and then you appeal and see what happens. Um,
yeah.
it
I mean,
does specifically only say asthma, but I agree there's inconsistency throughout policy on other things. And if they're saying you can't get the filter without having removed the carpet because
yeah.
because you haven't removed the allergen, it makes sense that that would be the next step is removing the allergen. So,
Yeah, they're usually really strict. Like when they say these are the only covered things, it's the only covered thing. But I mean that I feel like they're opening a door. So,
mhm.
um,
And it
then
is a covered thing. It's just a matter of the rationale behind it.
yeah.
So,
And Tara was asking, you cannot get generators covered for oxygen dependent kids, but tanks are unreliable. So what is there in that case? Any idea? I'll throw out my idea and then punt it to the group. In my personal circumstance, we actually had the physician write a script for a higher flow rate. So, and make sure that you have an M tank, which is the really, really large standing tank that lasts for a long time. And then you have multiple other tanks, and they should give you a closet filled with tanks that could actually last quite a while. And we had a really high flow rate. And so I'll have to say we used that. We had an oxygen concentrator. Of course, that is only when the power is on, but I think those are possibilities. And you can also get like a special plug for your car where your concentrator can plug into your car. Um, it's like a converter.
mhm.
What do you think, Jenny?
I mean, definitely the M tank, which I agree is a huge pain to have to store. It takes up a lot of room. Um, but unfortunately, that's going to be your best option and what they're going to cover in terms of emergency planning. Um, there are refillable tanks, so that way you're not always keeping up a bunch of empty ones in addition to your filled ones. So that might be an option too if you're not already doing that as a way to keep your own supply without being dependent on deliveries. Um, but yeah, it's a real tough situation, unfortunately.
And on that, they were supposed to change it and have a little bit more flexibility on who qualified besides just kids on ventilators, but apparently they changed
Well,
their
that was
mind.
part of the in 6 months, over the
Yeah.
next 6 months, they're going to reevaluate. And it hasn't happened. So,
Nope. Because we fought hard for that to give them more
mhm,
flexibility.
yeah. Even controlling temperature is important for a lot of kids. And so needing it so that your AC still runs and it doesn't get too hot in your house, or you can have heat in your house and the power goes out and not have to worry. Um, so those were some of the other reasons that we told them they should pursue whole house, because how do you hook your heating and air up to a portable generator? Like you can't. So yeah.
There's another question from Danielle. She asked, can you have your air duct cleaned out? It was recommended by HVAC company when our AC units stopped working, and they look at everything. I'm thinking that's probably no, but like Jenny said, I would always try. Because it doesn't hurt, especially in a situation of severe allergies and asthma, and or asthma. I think it's worth an attempt.
And I think kind of going back to piggybacking on, the respiratory issues with the carpeting, and we said, they'll cover whole house filtration when all other preventive measures have been tried, and that might be one of those preventive measures that has been tried. So you might, for that same way, utilize that part of policy in requesting it, but it's not in there now. I don't want to get false hope about what you can get approved.
Yeah, no, I agree. So Stephanie asked, have you seen anyone get more than one vertical platform lift for their home? I just wanted to see if Jenny had seen that before. I can say, Stephanie, that I know, I have had clients get more than one ramp to their home, and essentially that is the same type of thing and costs around the same amount of money. And the argument that we made was related to, like having multiple egresses from your home is critical in a, in an emergency. And
Right.
I think that the argument can be made depending on what the footprint of your home is like and what the circumstances are. But I mean, it definitely would be a fight. I'll put it that way. Because like what folks were saying when they responded, it's really hard to get more than one of something. So you'd really have to make your case for it. But like again, it's worth asking, I think, because everybody's situations are very unique. And so they're going to look at your individual situation and the individual footprint of your home and make that determination.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen a VPL, which is vertical platform lift. If you weren't familiar with the acronym, I've seen that and a stair lift be approved in the same home, because they were for different parts of the house. But I don't know about two VPLs. I don't think I've seen two VPLs specifically. Were there any other questions? We can keep going. I guess we're good. Managing and talking is sometimes a challenge, so I apologize. I'm still a Zoom newbie when it comes to running it. Okay, the next section, goods and services, which is on page 123 and 124, and individual directed goods and services, which is 124 to 127. And really, I think 26 and 27 also have things under goods and services. Essentially, if you are receiving your caregiving from an agency, then what you're requesting is considered goods and services. If you are doing consumer direction, I'll go back. Yeah. If you are doing consumer direction, then what you would be requesting is individual directed goods and services. So those are two different categories, but if you were to look at the first two or a page and a half of each, they're identical. So it really is more about how you're receiving your caregiving services than anything else. So there's overlap at the beginning, and then there's some extra services that are also included in that. So we will try to dig into it. This is not exactly in order per policy because I was trying to group things together, but all of this is word for word from policy. So I did not change any of this language. The goal of goods and services and individual goods and services are items that are intended to increase the CAPC beneficiaries' ability to perform ADLs or IADLs, which is instrumental activities of daily living, and decrease dependence on personal assistance services or other Medicaid-funded services. So that is the goal. That is the umbrella that we're looking at all of this with. So because it was a little almost like footnote after this chart we're going to look at in a second, I went ahead and put it here. But in addition to the things that we're going to look at in the chart are things that if you were around during COVID may be familiar. Under certain circumstances, what they're saying is protective equipment like wipes, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes and spray, the thermometer, facial tissue, and biohazard waste bags. Those things are still covered under goods and services when qualifying conditions are met. And so, as we would remember from COVID, this would be if you have some sort of infectious disease and are needing to isolate, and the caregiver needs to protect themselves. In addition to the chart we're about to look at, coverage for hypoallergenic pillows, blinds, housing safety, and quality inspection are coverable when qualifying conditions are met. Which actually makes me think back to what we were just talking about the vent ducts being cleaned. I wonder if that would be covered under this actually, because that seems to kind of fit what they're getting at here in terms of reducing allergens. So, and it says quality inspection. So that makes me think maybe you could do it here. Maybe this is the bucket that you try it under. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide and look at this chart. And unfortunately, this chart, when you look at it in policy, both under goods and services and individual directed goods and services, it's all broken up. So try to make it a little bit more legible here. And actually, I need to give my husband credit because he's the one that did it for me, because I couldn't figure it out. So we've got the headings across the top, which sort of kind of gives them the different category. And if you're not familiar with activities of daily living or ADLs, these are all different ADLs. So ADLs to assist with bathing, with dressing, with accessing the home, with eating, with toileting, and with mobility. So all of these things that are listed here are things that allow your CAPC recipient to be more independent. So, for example, let's look at the utensils, look at eating. Adaptive utensils, no spill cups and straw holders, the two-handled mug holder, special bowls and plates that can't be tipped over, all kinds of things like that. And actually, they're missing some commas in there, so I apologize. Now that I just told you my husband did such a great job with it, which he did. I'm very grateful. So those are some things here that you could request. I don't feel like I need to read all of these to you, but just keep in mind when you're thinking about what does my child need in order to be more independent, whether that's in eating or dressing or whatever. Here's some ideas that you may not be aware of. How might a mattress protector increase independence? If it's reducing reducing like I think of it not as like a mattress protector against urine, but more of like to keep allergens out, like trapping them in the mattress and having that barrier. So you're not breathing in dust and things from the mattress. So that makes you less susceptible to illness. The rationale I can come up with. So we've got some pictures of some of these things. If you're not familiar, you want to go to the next slide. So we've got bibs, we've got washable mattress pads. As you know, disposable are covered under Medicaid state plan, but the washable ones are not. And I know I can speak for probably anybody that has ever used a washable bed pad. They are way better than dealing with the disposable. So highly recommend. We've got a sponge on a long handle to help with washing. There's a key turner on the bottom left. Something that I see people ask for a lot is almost like an umbrella or cover for a wheelchair to keep the sun off of your child. So that is covered as well. And then we've got some adaptive utensils. They make amazing things these days. So definitely be looking for what would serve your child well. Ask your OT and PT. Let them know that this isn't a possibility and what things do they recommend to benefit your child. Keep in mind, a lot of these things, they're going to ask for medical necessities. So a letter from a PT or your physician to say that this is needed. These are all items that have to meet the need of the child. The next slide. So under goods and services, there's also a transportation benefit. And I'm sure every case manager in the room is shooting me dirty looks. But it's in policy, so we have to talk about it. So keeping in mind that obviously emergency transportation would be calling 911 to get to the hospital. There is also non-emergency medical transportation that is provided through your county social services. That might be a van that comes and picks up at your door, or it might be a gas card or reimbursement for travel to and from doctor's appointments, or therapy appointments or other medical appointments like that. This service is not any of those things. This is completely different. And as you know, we cannot have a duplication of state plan. We have to request from state plan before coming to CAPC for the request. So the goal of this transportation service is to allow the beneficiary or their caregiver go and run to the pharmacy or pick up groceries or things like that. If they do not have a way to do that otherwise, then this is something that they can utilize. There's a couple different ways that it can be done. It can be through mileage reimbursement. It can be through taxi, through bus tokens, or a gas voucher. There are limitations here for all of those, whether what the reimbursement rate is, what the maximum allowable is. So I don't feel like I need to read through all of that and do all the math with you, but know that this is there and you now know where it is. This is again under the goods and services benefit. So it's subject to that $800 per fiscal year benefit that goes under goods and services. And that benefit being per fiscal year, I don't think we've talked about fiscal year yet, but that is July 1st to June 30th. So anything that's on that kind of cycle, those are the dates for that every year. So just keep that in mind if you were getting some of the equipment that we just looked at on the last slide, but you also needed transportation benefit. Those combined cannot exceed that $800. Someone asked if you can use this if you already get Medicaid transportation reimbursement. Yes, because that transportation is for medical appointments, and this is not for medical appointments. This is to go to the pharmacy or the grocery store or another appointment that's not covered by Medicaid, so then Medicaid wouldn't provide transportation to it. So that's the limitation there. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Also under goods and services are nutritional services. Now keep in mind your formulas are going to be covered under Medicaid state plan. So we're not duplicating that. These are things that are not covered by DME and not covered by pharmacy, because there are a few supplements that pharmacy will cover. So this is everything that is not that. So again, they're going to require physician order. You can't just decide, oh, I think this B12 supplement would be really great for my child. And you can't just go and say, hey, can you get this for me? You do need to have a prescription from the doctor for that. Again, this is all under goods and services, so subject to that $800 per fiscal year benefit. The last thing that we're gonna, the last thing we're gonna talk about in terms of goods and services is pest eradication. So that can be for like a bed bug infestation or something along those lines. It will only cover it one time. So it's not for you to have a monthly service or a quarterly service that comes by and sprays to prevent an infestation. This is only to treat when there actually is a problem, and it can only be done one time per year. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Specialized medical equipment. So this is its very own category. It's on page 127. There's not a lot to say about it. It covers adaptive car seats and it covers vehicular transport bus. So there's an example here of both. They will not cover something that is of general utility. So a regular car seat is not going to be covered. It does have to be a special adaptive car seat, even though that makes it cost 100 times more. There is no budget number associated with these services. So it's just, whatever it costs, they will cover it. So you might want to get quotes from a couple places to make sure that you're being responsible with Medicaid dollars. But if the car seat really does cost $3,000, then they will cover it. To my knowledge, it is not in the $28,000 budget. The trikes are, but this, I did not think it was. I could be wrong about that. I see someone asked about more than one adaptive car seat. Most adaptive car seats have very large ranges in height and weight and just need to be modified to fit the child as they grow. If a child is able to be in a regular car seat until they're 20 pounds or whatever, I'm a little out of the car seat phase, so I don't remember the requirements, but in general, if you're getting one beyond that, it's probably going to grow with the child. But if for some reason it absolutely is not possible to work with your child anymore, then they would. And if you're saying, oh, I understand. And I think I caught that when Dania asked to be unmuted.
It's okay. Sorry. For some
I
reason
know
it
you're
keeps
familiar
doing
with that
that to me.
situation.
Every time I go back on mute, it's like it traps me.
Oh, sorry.
So it's 30 pounds is the weight limit. So you are kind of stuck using commercial seats until you reach the 30-pound limit for the adaptive seats. And yes, they will cover more than one. It's not easy to do it, but I personally have gotten more than one before. And it's definitely, I believe we got it under an appeal. And sorry, there's a lot going on behind me. And basically it was the circumstances related to our home life and the carpooling situation. So I think that there are certainly arguments to be made for unusual carpooling arrangements, potentially two homes, like if you have parents who are not together, or you have two working parents, or you have just an unusual situation at home. I mean, there could be a lot of possibilities there, but it's definitely worth trying because I did win that on an appeal.
And I did check policy. The 30 pounds is actually for the vest. There's not written in policy that I'm looking at that has any kind of limitation or minimum for the car seat. It just says the vest is for somebody weighing over 30 pounds.
Oh, well, so
I say that's not how they're applying it, but I'm saying what policy says.
So the that number was told to me, well, you can guess, but so yeah, no, it's good to know. If it's not in policy, then I think we should go with that, because I think, I mean, you can certainly be in a situation, and I've had a lot of kids over the years can be very lanky but very skinny and have difficulty meeting like a weight threshold. So I would definitely, if your child is not safely being transported in a commercial car seat, then absolutely talk to some people about that, and your PT and your case manager.
I know some tiny kids that know how to wiggle their way out of a car seat. So that would definitely be a safety issue and something that needs to be addressed. I did see one question in the comments about where'd it go? Oh, about being in an accident. So if you're in an accident with your car seat, whether it's commercial or an adaptive car seat, that's something that insurance should replace, whether it's your insurance or if someone else was responsible for the accident. So, and because of that, I don't want to say for sure that it would get covered because they do expect you to have like insurance on your vehicle modification and insurance on your home modification. So I would expect this to probably fall under that as well. So just be careful about that. Okay. Training, education, and consultative services. Can you go on? There we go. Okay. This one's pretty straightforward, I think. This is cut and pasted from policy. You've got the page numbers there. The purpose of the service is to enhance the decision-making ability of the beneficiary, improve their mental health and social interaction, to enable the beneficiary to independently care for him or herself, or to enhance or aid in the ability of the family member or a personal care assistant in covering for the CAPC beneficiary. It even specifically says, this was another sentence taken from policy, this service covers conference registration, enrollment fees for classes, and office fees for therapies that are not covered under Medicaid state plan. It does have a $500 per fiscal year limit. And this is, these are the, like, this is it. This is just the one page for this service. So anything that fits that category. I will say personally, our family has used it for conference registration, to go and attend, like the International Symposium on our rare disease. I've seen it used for like speech therapy camp. Regular speech therapy, of course, is covered under state plan, but this camp is different because it's with other kids and facilitating communication between kids. So that's improving their social interaction, which was part B. So that's how you can frame things and get something like that covered. Also, a very popular thing covered in this category is therapeutic horseback riding. There is such a thing as hippotherapy, which is receiving formal therapy on a horse. That might be PT or OT or speech. Therapeutic horseback riding is different than hippotherapy. So hippotherapy is a Medicaid state plan covered service because the provider can bill for PT, OT, speech. Therapeutic horseback riding is not covered under state plan. So that is something that can be covered here, whether it's, a semester long or year long class, or if it's something you're taking in the summer. Most therapeutic riding centers that I'm familiar with, they develop goals specifically for each child. That might include things like improving mental health, improving social interaction. It could even be physical goals like being able to ride without someone holding on to them all the time for balance. So they'd be working on core strength and things like that might allow them to be more independent, like with mobility or something like that. So when you're requesting services like this, keep in mind these 4 reasons that the service can be utilized for, and make sure that your request would tie back to one of these. And if it does, then it is something that should be covered. So the cost of an advocate for an IEP meeting. Well, I'm not familiar with hiring an advocate for an IEP meeting. I refer all of my IEP questions to the ECAC, who provide all of their services for free. So I don't know. That's a question mark. Because it's a school-related thing, you would have to tie it back to one of these. And so how would you do that? I guess maybe it depends on what you're advocating for. I'm not sure. Did I miss any other questions about this service? And we only have one more, so I think we're doing right on time like we should be. So let's go on to the next one. Vehicle modification. So as I said, these were loosely alphabetical, but they were in policy order. So you've got your page numbers there for this. This is the list of all of the things that can be done to a vehicle that would be covered under CAPC. So I don't feel like I need to read all 15-ish, 20-ish things. But if you take this list to someone who's, some kind of dealer or company that is selling modified vehicles, this should be something that they're familiar with. And keep in mind that it's not going to cover a wheelchair tie down for a child that doesn't need a wheelchair. It's not going to cover items that aren't medically necessary for that individual child, like we talked about at the beginning. So if these are things that you need done to your vehicle to benefit your child, then these are the things that are covered. Let's go to the next slide. So a question I get asked a lot, what about a vehicle that's already been modified? Instead of me going and buying a vehicle and taking it to someone to get modifications done, what if the modification is already done? Can you use funds for that? And the answer is yes. This paragraph is word for word from policy. So there was no confusion about how to request it. So obviously, the modifications need to be such that they benefit your child's needs and that are safe. And it doesn't cover the cost of the vehicle itself, only the breakdown cost of the modification. So if you're purchasing from a vendor that is selling modified vehicles, they will have a price breakdown of just the vehicle and then what each of the modification parts cost. And then you would submit that itemized bill to CAPC and then be requesting for the coverage of for just the modification costs. If the vehicle is new with a new modification, then you're looking at having, if you have the budget, the whole amount covered for the modification. If you have a used vehicle that has a new modification on it, which is sometimes a more cost-effective way to go because the modification piece will still be covered at 100%, presuming you have that in your budget. And then the vehicle cost that you're responsible for is less because that's older. Keep in mind that older, as we see in the second paragraph, an older vehicle that has over 80,000 miles on it does have to pass an inspection and be able to withstand the modification or at least have a life expectancy of the vehicle of 5 or more years. So they're always looking for the reasonable expectation is that a vehicle modification will last 5 years. If we can go to the next slide, because that ties into this. For vehicles that are already modified and used. So if we've got a used modification, the assessment that we talked about, all of this has to be incorporated in, and then they're only going to look at paying the current value of the modification. And since they expect the life expectancy of a modification to be 5 years, one that's brand new, so 0 years old, is covered at 100%. And then it's reduced by 20% for each year. So at 1 year old, it would cover 80% of the original price. At 2 years, it would cover 60% of the original price. At 3 years, it would cover 40% of the original price. At 4 years, did I say that right? 4 years, it would be 20%. And then when it's 5 years old, that's the life of that modification. So it would cover 0. So that's how that whole thing kind of breaks down, where you're getting the original price of the modification and then calculating that current value based on 20% per year. Let's see. Any questions about vehicle modifications? So yes, you can buy a vehicle that has already been modified if it meets your child's needs. Yes, you can buy a used vehicle with a new modification that's already been completed, or you can go and buy your own vehicle and then go have it modified after the fact. Of course, make sure you're talking with a vendor to be sure that you purchase a vehicle that is able to be modified, because I've heard of that happening. Okay, well, if we're no other questions on that, I just wanted to share a couple of quick final thoughts, because I've had my own hesitation about this session, because I know that case managers are about to get a bunch of questions from y'all and a bunch of requests from y'all. And as much as we are here to support families and getting you what you need and what is possible, we also have to work with our case managers, and not just our personal ones, but the case manager community at large. And having been a former case manager, I have a special heart for that. And so I wanted to be sure that I just wanted to remind everyone that there are however many, there was, I think, 40 at one point here. This is being recorded, and a lot of people have asked for that. So that and more families are probably going to start asking their case managers for things. So I just wanted to remind us all to be respectful to our case managers when we're asking for these things, because they have more than you as their on their caseload. And if they're getting a lot of people asking at the same time, they're going to be a little bit slower turning things around. So just be generous with your interpretation of that, being respectful. And also, because I often hear, why didn't my case manager know about this? Or why didn't they tell me that this was possible? And, the sad truth is that case managers don't get in-depth training on CAPC services. And there's a lot that are never used or have been complicated to figure out how to use. And so they're learning just like we're all learning. And so just be on a learning path with them versus feeling like, they somehow failed you because you didn't know about something. The fact that they want to learn too is super great. And I heard that some case managers are planning to jump on tonight, and it's 8:30 at night on a work night. And so, how great is that, that they're willing to do that. So just please keep all of those things in mind. We all need each other. We all have to work together. As we've said before, this presentation was recorded. It'll be posted to our YouTube by this weekend. And everyone who registered, I will send the slides out as a PDF. Probably this over the weekend. We'll see how it goes. I have a crazy day tomorrow. So if anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes, but
I have a comment, and there's
Yeah.
also an additional question from Allison, which I can read. It's a little bit up the chat. Another comment, I just want to underscore what Jenny was saying about case managers. Jenny and I were colleagues in case management for 8.5 years, and they are really trying their best. And keep in mind, if you've been in CAPC for a long time, especially if you've been in CAPC for more than 2 waiver periods, you know that, or you may not know, or you may know that the waiver policy changes from 5-year period to 5-year period. So because we're in a new 5-year period and there was a pretty lengthy transition period between this current waiver period and the previous one, which was kind of like a no man's land policy-wise, you gotta keep in mind that this is a lot of new services and goods that were not available about 6.5 years ago. So that's also important to remember, because it was not offered back then because it may not have existed. So just keep that in mind. All right, there was a question from Allison. She said, are there any set timelines that Medicaid has on making a decision regarding disability determination? She's been waiting 5 months after being approved for Cap C. I don't know. I'm gonna punt that to Jenny.
That seems excessive. There's not a limitation, to my knowledge, on how long they can take. But that's not normal. So I would follow up with your county social services like your Medicaid caseworker. And number one, to make sure that the paperwork was sent in, which, as I shared earlier today when I gave another presentation, your Medicaid caseworker should be asking for your provider's names and contact information to pass along to disability determination. So if you were never asked that, then that was probably never submitted. If you were asked that, then I would follow up with your county DSS. Unfortunately, there's no way really to call disability determination yourself. So yikes, Allison, I'm really sorry about that. If you send me an email, maybe I can connect you with disability rights to get involved in that, because that is a mess that needs to be corrected. If I'll put our group email in the chat so everybody will have that, in case you didn't have it already, or people just find me on Facebook. Any other last questions? I really do appreciate y'all coming. I know this has been a long time coming. But hopefully this helps you also dig into policy a little bit more, because almost every word on these slides came straight from policy. So I want policy to feel accessible, and I know that that's hard when it's almost 200 pages and a lot of bad grammar and weird wording and all of that. But you have you don't need me to read policy with you. And that goes for your case manager too. So get into policy, share it with them, and then start asking for what you need. All right, well, it seems that we don't have any questions, so I'm gonna turn off the recording and let everyone enjoy the rest of their evening. But I will get that follow-up email out to you guys probably over the weekend. So I hope everyone has a good evening.